everybody? It's Kyle, and this is Knockouts and Three Counts. And hey, man, there's a lot of news going around the world of pro wrestling, MMA, and boxing with the battle of the YouTuber versus what's being billed as maybe the hope of MMA. So, to get a little bit of help, I enlisted the services of our buddy, Mr. Mathew Priest from the Ramblings of a Grappleman podcast. How you doing, kind sir?
Oh, I'm ALIVE, alive and kicking here, Kyle. It's a beautiful day. It's April 15th, and let's get this thing going.
Well, let everybody know where they can find you, find your show, all that good shit.
Mathew1T _ Priest, Twitter and Instagram, and then Ramblings of a Grappleman, all one word on the Instagram, Grappleman, Apple with a GR in front of it and a man on the end. But yeah, that's my stuff.
Well, Corey, how about you? What the hell's new? What the hell's exciting? And how you feeling today?
What's exciting is the fact that we got a packed weekend of fights coming up, and tomorrow is Friday, and it's the real kickoff to it all, unless you want to count last night's ONE FC card they did on TNT. But I'm just excited to get into it, man. I'm excited to roll into another weekend and get this work week in the books.
So I'm with you on that, but as I mentioned at the top of the show, and look at me, I'm over here telling people to throw out social medias, all that stuff. Make sure you're following the show at KO3C Pod, all that good stuff. You can see those in the corner. Follow me at Detroit Knockout, Corey at Fight Fan from the 313, all that good shit. Without any further ado, man, before we get into anything, I mean, I feel like we kind of have to start with the news that broke today. I mean, all hell clearly broke loose for WWE today, and it's like, it's crazy because it's literally almost 1 year to the day of what a lot of people are calling one of the darkest days in wrestling with the mass release at the beginning of the pandemic last year. We had a bunch of releases in the WWE today. Priest, did you get to see anything about that? And if so, what are your thoughts? I mean, the names that we've had released, you got Mickie James, Bo Dallas, Samoa Joe being the most surprising one. Billy Kay, who was literally just on Raw this week. You got Mojo Rawley, who hasn't been doing much lately, but I mean, Chelsea Green as well. Like I say, I mean, a lot of people getting released today from the WWE.
Yeah, I believe Peyton Royce and Kalisto also on that list. Bo Dallas as well. Not sure if you mentioned him. It's not a surprise. Every year, I mean, there might have been like a couple year gap there, but I mean, there was a good 5 or 6 year stretch about 10 years ago where they were doing releases a couple weeks after WrestleMania. Last year they did it. This year they did it again. Not a surprise. No name really surprised me on the list either. It's very unfortunate for those people that get released. It always sucks to see someone losing their dream job and getting put out of work, essentially. But the cream is going to rise to the top, and we'll see some good opportunities. I think for some of the talents out of here, it does suck for them, but none of them were really being used on a feature role. Billy Kay, you mentioned, being on WrestleMania, being on was it Raw or SmackDown? She was recently on, but she's probably the only one that's been regularly featured on TV. Samoa Joe was a commentator, but his contract, I believe, was coming to an end in August, so it wouldn't shock me if he was just looking to get out, and then they just helped expedite that process a little early. Again, not really surprised. It's very unfortunate. It does suck, but it's something WWE's done pretty regularly right after WrestleMania through most of their existence.
I'm surprised to see the Samoa Joe one, though, being the fact that he really did just work the desk over WrestleMania. That one's kind of surprising to me. And even Kyle had brought up the fact that he was interested in seeing him get back in the ring himself. So, I mean, that one seemed the most interesting of them all from the outside in, I guess you could say.
Pretty much, that's like I said. I mean, Samoa Joe was the one that really kind of got me, just for the simple fact that, I mean, I thought, they were kind of just waiting off for him to, get back in the ring or whatever it was. And I thought, for what it was worth, I mean, I feel like he was doing good on commentary as well. But the question is, I mean, Where do you think we go out of here, though? Where do you think we could see, Joe go next? I know for me, man, I mean, obviously, anytime somebody big leaves WWE, the first thing you're going to hear everybody say is AEW. But I wouldn't be shocked to see Joe kind of do sort of what we've seen Mike Bennett do and other guys do, where they've gone other places around before they really did what they were going to do. I could see Joe making a stop back in Ring of Honor, because I mean, Ring of Honor has been really putting out some of the best TV that I feel like we've been seeing in wrestling for a little bit. I don't know how much you've gotten to check out of that, but where do you think we see Samoa Joe land?
I think Ring of Honor is a good assumption. I just don't know how healthy Joe is either. I know he's been wanting to get back in the ring. I've been a little in the dark, I do have to admit, on the behind the scenes stuff, but I don't know if he's really was training for an in-ring return. Pretty much once someone does a really good job on commentary, it's commonplace in the world of WWE for Vince and Kevin Dunn to really just lock in on them as a commentator. We saw it with Jerry Lawler. We've seen it with Taz, Booker T. It's very rare that these guys, once they get JBL, once they get behind the desk, once they do commentary, very, very rare any of them come out from behind the desk and get back in the ring. Even Corey Graves, who I know at one point was looking to get back in the ring, he probably could get medically cleared by Joe Maroon out of Pittsburgh, much like Daniel Bryan did, much like Christian did. But Corey Graves is never going to step foot in the WWE ring to wrestle unless he gets out of his contract and goes wrestles elsewhere and they bring him back in. So I think it's actually a good move for Joe. I think Japan, if he can get to Japan, will make a lot of sense. I believe that's really where he would end up. Pandemic makes it a little complicated, but Ring of Honor, Japan make the most sense. Wouldn't be shocked to see him in Impact or AEW, though. I mean, he's got so much history and Impact, and they would probably look to really bring him in because of that lineage and history. I think it'd be a smarter move for Joe to go there first as well, because he's already a star there, and he's not going to be competing for top spot TV time with all the talent AEW has.
I can agree with that too, especially with New Japan Strong that they've been putting out on Fridays, where you've got the likes of Tom Lawler and a lot of American talent on that show. I could definitely see Joe being there. For anybody that's watching, let us know in the comments. We're talking about Samoa Joe and all the other releases that happen in WWE. We're going to get into our thoughts with the WrestleMania fallout and all the big fight news that's going on this weekend. So, like I say, if there's anything that you guys are looking forward to this weekend, please let us know in the comments.
One thing I was going to say, what you talked about where other talent's going to pop up. I'm pretty sure a safe guess for Peyton Royce and probably Billy Kay. They'll probably read the AEW, especially with Spears being there. Mojo Rawley's an interesting one. I don't know where he would end up. Kalisto's a Chicago guy, so I can see him easily going back to Chicago, working the top indies there. He could also go for an easy run down to Mexico. He has a lot of connections down there as well. But again, very underutilized talent in WWE. Bo Dallas, from what I last read, he was actually really looking to get into acting. That's one of the reasons he wasn't doing much with WWE. He did that, I think it was Marine 5 or 6 or whatever. So I wouldn't be surprised if Bo Dallas tries to go that way a little bit more. But dude's second generation guy or third generation and work his ass off. He could end up really anywhere. I'm forgetting somebody. Oh, Chelsea Green is the big X factor out of all of this.
Chelsea Green is going to do some big shit when she gets out of here.
Yeah, well, she was like the hottest female act on the indies when WWE signed her, so she'll have no problem going somewhere and getting over. A good close friend of mine's already been posting pictures with her and stuff, so it's. I think she's going to have the market's hers. Wherever she wants to go, she's going to end up. Again, though, if she's healthy. Well, some of these people had injury concerns. I think that might have led into the releases.
Chelsea's had injury problems everywhere she's been. That's been the only knock on her. I mean, she's great. I enjoy her character work, her work in the ring. I mean, she's great, but her biggest problem is she's gotten hurt every time she's gotten a big chance, even when she was in NXT. It's going to be interesting to see how things play out. I also think, we're talking about the releases that there were today, but Andrade just got let go too. I think we could see him show up in Ring of Honor too. You got to remember, you got Roosh and all those guys there as well. I could see him making a stop in Ring of Honor as well. I mean, hell, it's going to be interesting. I don't think we've seen the last out of Mickie James yet either.
Yeah, no, Mickey James is, a perfect, easy assumption to say she'll end up in the NWA, but Mickey James could also go wherever she wants. She was just doing some commentary work too, so that one's actually a little surprising. But she also could be one that wanted to phase out, wanted to work a little bit more. She doesn't have many years left in the ring, so. But her and Serena Deeb would be a good, fun match in the NWA. I would love to see Mickey, be a veteran presence in that AEW roster as well, and really help those girls along. With if Serena's tied up to NWA, they could really use a talent like a Mickey James to come in there and teach the youth movement that they have down there with the female roster.
Yeah, I agree with that. And speaking of, all this coming, we always know that there's the releases around WrestleMania. I want to know, Corey, you've been quiet a little bit. So what are your overall takeaways from WrestleMania and TakeOver? What were the things you liked? What were the things that stuck out to you that you didn't like? I know this is the first WrestleMania you've watched in God knows how long, and you've never gotten to see a TakeOver. So now that we're a little bit removed from it and we've seen how things have shaken out, what were your biggest takeaways and minuses for the WrestleMania weekend?
My biggest takeaway, I guess, is women's wrestling has really changed since I was last watching. That would probably be my biggest takeaway, honestly. Not just the fact that they main evented the first night, correct? Yeah.
Yep.
Not only the fact that they main evented, but like I had said in our Tuesday interview, my MVP of NXT and WrestleMania was God, I keep forgetting her name.
Io Shirai.
Io Shirai. I was such a fan of hers, man. I felt like she really put on a hell of a performance. Like I said, women's wrestling has really evolved. That's my number one kind of from the outside in. Not watching it in roughly about 10, 15 years at this point. Yeah, it's been a drastic difference, honestly. Other than that, I felt like everybody else really was solid. I don't feel like there was a ton of standout performances other than the people that I didn't expect to have anything positive going their way that ended up being positive, I guess you could say, in like the Bad Bunny circumstance. Or what was the very, very, very large black dude in the tag team?
Almost an AJ.
Yeah.
The tag team title match.
Yeah. I was very surprised. I was very surprised in his performance. I know he kind of just went out there and big man, but it was surprising. It especially with you telling me the fact that was his first match in WWE, that was impressive, man. Yet again, you can't really go understating how good of a performance it was from Bad Bunny. I know, yet again, another thing we had talked about on Tuesday's show, but I feel like The Miz kind of helped carry that. The team that they had going on really kind of made the match a lot more presentable from the outside, but Bad Bunny really went in there and did his thing. It was entertaining, man. It was entertaining. It was a fun couple days. Definitely a drastic change from what I'm used to consuming throughout a week. That's for sure.
All right. Well, Priest, what about you, man? I mean, you're coming at this from a total different angle than us. You having been a wrestler, trained people to wrestle and things like that. What were your thoughts on the two names that he mentioned? I mean, I, for one, was definitely impressed by what I saw by Omos. I think he didn't do anything out the water, but I mean, for a guy who was in there for his first match, I thought he did well. And I mean, like Corey said, I mean, all anybody's been talking about since WrestleMania is the performance of Bad Bunny. And I mean, I got to say, when he was in there for that long to start the match like that, I was shocked. Now, I'm kind of bummed to see how they've made Damian Priest look like a bum the week after all that happened, but that's for another time.
Yeah, no, almost did his job. Like, that's bottom line. He did his job. The most interesting thing about that match to me was the placement. So AJ and Omos were the heels, New Day notoriously baby faces, right? Where they put Omos is they put him on the hard cam side facing the camera, which is traditionally the babyface corner. Usually the guy getting the hot tag in every tag match is going to be in that spot, so you can see him working the crowd, reaching that arm out for that babyface to come make that tag. That's the babyface corner almost always. So I thought it was really, when they put Almost there, I said, okay, well, that's interesting placement. That's more on a television production side of things that most fans don't notice, that's a way things get produced. Your featured talent is going to go in that corner. They're always going to be their face is always going to be seen on TV, as opposed to having their back to the hard cam, right? So Almost is featured all match long. AJ Styles and New Day, the job that they do in that match to build to that tag to Almost is what makes Almost getting in the ring to get a pop. I was surprised that the crowd popped when Almost got the tag, and that's a testament to how good AJ and the New Day's job was in the match. And they did such a fantastic job of building that, and then he did his job. Almost did his job on the apron. He worked. Then when he got in the ring, he did his business. Everything looked clean, looked safe, looked good, looked devastating. Guy has dollar signs written all over him. We'll see how well he works 6 months to a year from now, once the cat's officially out of the bag. Corey mentioned Io Shirai. She had the task of main eventing the USA Network NXT show against Raquel Gonzalez. Raquel Gonzalez, second generation. Again, bright star, big presence. I really enjoyed that match. I thought Io Shirai did her, again, she did her job really well. The big high spot off the skull, which was really cool. But really good match, and she passed the torch to Raquel. And NXT has done such a good job of that with their women. As you have seen the evolution of Bianca and Rhea also capturing titles at WrestleMania. And I had a nice, cute little spot last night on their TV program.
I was going to say that was really cool. I see. Now that's the things like Corey, that's something you mentioned, not to cut you off, Priest. It only,
go ahead.
Corey, that's something you mentioned, right? So like you were watching some of the stuff cold. That's why like those weekly shows are so important. Cause like they brought out, Rhea, Bianca, and Raquel was already in the ring, and it's like the 3 generations of NXT, and it's showing up on the screen, the pictures of them when they were in NXT. So it's like those are the things that make people invested, and that's what's crazy, because you hear a lot of fans say, WWE just can't do stories. It's not WWE. Something about the main roster, because I feel like NXT, in my opinion, and I've said this a lot of times on this show, I feel like NXT puts out the most complete product.
It's because they feature less talent on their show than all the other wrestling programs, and it's easier to convey a story to an audience when you're featuring less talent, and that's a positive of NXT. And their takeovers are only 5 matches, and there's only 5 a year, so that's very good that they do. But WWE, watching WrestleMania now, I have to admit I didn't watch much of Raw or SmackDown. I would catch bits and pieces. I was kind of aware what was going on, but the video packages for WrestleMania to lead up to the matches. So watching the video package and watching the match, I thought the stories looked really well put together building up to the matches from that perspective. And then the matches, this was a hard thing that most wrestlers struggle with, but they're in WWE for a reason, is because their matches matched the story told in the build to them. So Corey talked about Bad Bunny, and the thing that stood out to me the most about Bad Bunny is he sold really, really well, which most celebrities don't sell well. The offensive side, whatever, that's the guys doing the moves. But Bad Bunny did the little things and selling really, really well. And that's from, being a fan. And then, he really devoted the last 3 months of his life to this match and working with The Miz every day. But the storyline building up to it, it made sense watching that video package and then watching the match. That match matched the story. Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre, the match matched the story. Brian Reigns and Edge, that match matched the story, which I really enjoyed that match. I think the big story, though, coming out of it has to be the Sasha Bianca match. Thought that was a great way to end night 1. That Saturday night, was the first time in a long time where I was just like, I felt a lot of pride, and I was really proud of being like a wrestler and a wrestling fan. Coming out of that whole night one experience, from the impromptu promos to the way that show flowed, to the Bad Bunny experience, to the Cesaro Seth Rollins match.
That was a great match.
There was just a lot of really good things in that night one. Then you have a historical main event. Those girls delivered. They tore it up. They told a great story. Then seeing my buddy RJ getting his show on the WWE
past guest to this
digital
show as well.
So RJ City getting his opportunities. I just had a lot of pride, and I was very proud of Saturday. And then Sunday just felt like a WWE pay-per-view. Had a great main event. Sammy and Owens was solid. Riddle and Sheamus was kind of a sleeper match. Like, I knew it would be good. You got two guys who are talented, but that match was really, really good. Like, that match was probably the second or third favorite match of the whole weekend. It surprised me. It was really good. It shouldn't be a surprise. I know Corey, you're probably familiar with Matt Riddle from his UFC days, but he's come such a long way as a wrestler. The spot with RVD, I know Kyle, you were tweeting about that. That was pretty great.
I thought that was hilarious. They let this man promote rolling papers on WrestleMania. When we're talking about they're going to censor all the content on the Peacock network, I'm dying. In the way he rolled into that shit, like, and talk about product placement. How about RVD rolling papers?
Yeah, it was good stuff. And no, I mean, it was good. Overall, WrestleMania better than the last few years that I can recall. I like the 2-night format. Last year, there was no fans, and the cinematic match was the story. And I mean, it was weird and it was memorable. But the year before that, I don't think WrestleMania, the last 2 or 3 years before that, they were just long, drawn out. Nothing really stood out. Great historical WrestleMania year. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
I'm with you on that one, man. Like, Corey and I were talking about that while we were watching it, and like, part of me, to be completely fair, was really bummed watching WrestleMania because I was invited by. Oh, what's going on, Ryan? I see in the comments we're talking about our last thoughts with everything since the fallout of WrestleMania, man. And we're going to be talking a little bit about Mission Pro Wrestling here in a little bit, since Dave LaGreca will be joining us this Tuesday. But like I say, man, I lost my train of thought for a second. But the thing with WrestleMania, night one, I enjoyed it, right? But it just seems like there's too many guys where it's kind of iffy. And as far as the 2-night format, I like it because I feel like when it's a 4-hour show a piece, you kind of have that, like, you have that time to space things out properly, right? Because sitting in that arena for 8 hours gets to the point where you're just like, oh my God, like, you just get burnt out. And then in a situation like that where it's pouring, like I said, I had the opportunity, thanks to Mega Ran, to go out there to all that stuff, and I didn't get to go because old scare with the corona. But damn it, man, it was I think 2 nights gives it more room to breathe, and I feel like it'll give more people, even though people think it's cutting people off the show, I feel like it'll make for an overall better show.
I don't see how it's cutting people off the show. There was 14 matches over the 2 nights, and you're featuring your 14. Really, you're featuring 12 of your main featured angles, and then they had the women's tag team title match sprinkled across the 2 nights, which was probably the weak spot on both shows. However, it was good for Natty and Tamina to get their profiled WrestleMania match. The 2 veterans.
They should have won.
I mean, those titles are kind of a joke. And the fact that they have NXT women's tag team titles, it's like, okay, I get it. Women should have tag team championships, but they don't know what the hell to do with that.
Well, to me, that just makes NXT developmental again.
Yeah, it's just it is what it is. But yeah, those were the low points each night. There was no story behind them, but it was a good chance to get those talent on the show. And the fact that Bayley didn't have a match and she was just doing the stupid comedy stuff, could have done without that.
Yeah, I hear that. Corey,
it
I
was-
know you had some thoughts on Bailey's comedy because, again, he didn't know much about Bailey, and I had to explain, like, dude, she's not, like, she's like the longest reigning SmackDown champion. He's like,
hurt?
really?
Is she hurt?
Not that I know of.
Interesting use of her. But Corey, I mean, the first time she did it, I was cracking up, but
okay, yeah. If they would have did it maybe once a night, or like maybe in shorter segments, or like I don't know. The cheese was thick on that character though. The cheese was thick, man, and it was from outside in. I'm like, man, like I get it, and like you said, the first time it's like, oh, okay, she's like this, corny girl, hosts her own show. That's cool. Like, hopefully a bunch of people check her out, because I had no idea.
yeah,
Like Kyle had said, and then like through the second one, I'm like, oh, okay, they're really pumping this girl. The third one, I'm like, damn, she must have paid this network some damn money or something. Fuck. And then it just kept getting like more and more, like the cheese was thick, and it was just like every time they would do like a backstage segment or something, you'd think it would be something that would be like funny or something. They would just play into that again, and it was just, yeah, I got over it pretty quickly.
yeah. No, I mean, she did the night one. I thought she was great, and night two it was forced, and it's tough to do. It's tough to do those pre-tapes and stuff, but yeah, I mean, WrestleMania, I'd say it was a success, and I think that showed what the TV shows that followed out of it across all companies.
I agree, man. I think WrestleMania as a whole, especially after what we had last year, I think it was a success. Why we went right back to the Thunderdome, I don't know. Even though I thought like the upgrade looked kind of cool, but why we went right back to that after we just saw they had fans, I don't know. But
there's still a lot of protocols and buildings and stuff, and they have that lease with that new, was it the Youngling Center out of USF? Isn't that where the Thunderdome is now? Because the Tampa Bay Rays are back in the it used to be the Thunderdome, Tropicana Field. Thank you. So yeah, the USF. I mean, they already paid the money. I don't think we're going to see fans until probably late summer, early fall. It shows, just because the way COVID's spiking back up in areas, and unless you're outdoors, you're not going to get a gathering of people.
It's interesting though, because on the other end of the spectrum, they're saying over there at AEW, they're going to be opening it up to about 50% capacity. So they're opening their crowds up a little more.
Well, they've got an open air outdoor stadium. So
yeah, good point.
That's different. But UFC, I was going to say, UFC's going into Jacksonville next weekend, and Dana White paid a lot of money for that, from what I understand, because the fines he was going to be facing were high, and he just said, I don't care. He paid them up front, and whatever. At your own risk.
Man. Well, I mean, this is good a segue into anything, but before we get into the actual fights themselves, talk about paying money. Now, I don't know if you guys heard about this, but did you know that Conor McGregor now no longer owns Proper 12? He sold his stake in Proper 12 for like double what it was worth, and is still like the brand ambassador because his name was on it. So he sold his stake in it. He's like double dipping on these dudes. I heard that he sold Proper 12, and I'm like, damn. Like, what happened?
I think it's smart for him, because when that whiskey came out and launched, it was everywhere. It was featured, tons of commercials, had a lot of buzz behind it. People who bought it then, they drink it, and the only people who are buying it now are the people who liked it. Like, it's it already peaked. It's not going to have a resurgence, so get out while the iron's still hot. Good on old Conor there. But one quick question that was kind of going to touch on the UFC related is UFC a publicly traded company yet? Are their ownership group?
Not yet. I am very, very curious to see how this whole story plays out, but I'm glad that you brought that up, because that is something that had slipped my mind. Had you seen that, Kyle? The WME MG, or what are they called? They changed their name a couple times now, but the actual was just a majority owner is now the sole owner of the UFC.
Yeah.
and plan on going public with the company in the upcoming future. So that's
Yeah.
gonna definitely change the landscape of how the UFC plays out. I'm very curious to see if it leans more towards like shareholder investment, trying to like garner wealth, I guess you could say, or if it's going to lean more in the way of like I don't even know necessarily what to compare it to. Like I almost want to compare it to like a Green Bay Packers, right? Like a publicly traded football team, I guess you could say. Like they're a huge organization. They have tons
Like
of
the
money.
WWE, Corey. WWE is publicly traded.
Yeah, but I'm talking with what I'm more familiar with, of course.
No, I
But
got you. I just meant as far as companies, you were like, I don't know what to compare it to. I was like, WWE is a huge company that's publicly traded like that too.
I ask simply because I don't think that Jacksonville show, and is it next weekend,
Yep.
takes place with a packed audience if they are publicly traded. I think they can get away with it because they're not. If they're publicly traded, there's no way. I think it would be a PR nightmare.
I feel like the public interest is really so 50-50 when it comes to this stuff. I feel like that's the thing is if you genuinely issue a statement when regarding to buying the tickets and stuff that you are entering at your own risk and so on and so forth, especially with the fact that vaccinations have been rolled out and a lot of people are holding onto that like it's a giant safety blanket. So it's I feel as though it's with the safety warnings and stuff, it's kind of like we can't live the precautious life forever because even with the precautious life, we've seen the continuous rise in the cases and stuff. So I feel as though I don't think that I don't even know how to properly word it in a PR friendly, I guess, way show wise that like, you know, I think people are ready to move on. And I think you're seeing that with the fact that the event sold out so damn quick. I mean, you can clearly argue that those sold out with bots and stuff because everything sells out with bots now. But even with that, I mean, there was genuine fan interest all across the board as soon as this stuff came out. So I see it from both regards, but I feel as though the people that don't want to go and stuff that won't. And I feel as though for the UFC to continue to keep putting on these big fights, man, they got to get butts and seats so they can make money off that. I mean, it is what it is.
So I can see that, man, and it's going to be a touchy subject. I feel like until we have this pay-per-view next weekend, we're not really going to know how it plays out, but I think it's clear that Dana is ready to move. And since we're talking about the UFC next Saturday, next Thursday, I can announce it now that we're going to be joined to make our picks, predictions, and all that good shit by a guy who, if you get most of your MMA news, it might be from him. Mr. James Lynch will be joining us this Thursday to break down and preview next weekend's UFC card. But before we get into this weekend's UFC card, we've also got another fight to talk about. And before we get to the fight itself, do you guys know that Triller just bought Fight TV?
I did not know that until you sent the show notes out earlier today, and I had to remind myself what the heck Triller was, and that's basically TikTok in the U.S., right?
So Triller was the app they used for the Mike Tyson fight,
as well as the one that's hosting the Jake Paul Ben Askren fight.
Ben Askren.
Okay, but no, isn't Triller itself though like an app?
They're like a broad media company, I guess you could say. But yes, that is their biggest intent. From what I've noticed, I guess, is the fact that they're hoping to run some type of social media network that also throws boxing pay-per-views with celebrities and has concerts during them and stuff. So I don't know.
Is the Zone dead? DAZN or whatever the hell it was?
No, they're not dead at all. I mean, they just had the Canelo fight on there, and they got matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, Canelo's fighting again this month.
That's right.
On the DAZN network.
I forgot they had Canelo. Yeah. They were hot for a while there, and that seems like they lost a lot of their content and folks they had. They had some steam behind them. So Triller buying Fight TV, it's a good thing. You got a lot of money behind Triller.
They just bought Teofimo Lopez too. They bought Teofimo Lopez from Top Rank for $6 million.
They got the money. It's good. Put them all on one platform. I mean, there's always hiccups when major companies buy smaller entities like a Peacock and WWE. But in the grand scale of things, in the bigger picture, it's usually for the best. It might suck at first, and it might suck for some fans, but in the long run, it's for the best.
Hey, if there's one thing I can say so far from what we've seen, I don't know if you got to watch the Mike Tyson fight and got to see all the stuff that went in between it. You know, Corey, one thing that you talk about a lot when it comes to fights is that you wish UFC, MMA, boxing would kind of take a page out of the WWE's book with some more of the entrance type stuff and things like that. Well, I mean, Triller has done a really good job of making these fights be like overall spectacle, because on this card you have also the debut of Mount Westmore, which has Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, Too Short, and E40 in it. They're going to debut at the show. You've also got a few other musical performances. Obviously, as we said, you know, the main event is going to be Jake Paul versus Ben Askren. And then you also have what was originally supposed to be scheduled as Frank Mir versus Antonio Tarver, but Antonio Tarver couldn't get licensed in Atlanta. It's going to now be Frank Mir versus former cruiserweight champion Steve Cunningham. So, I mean, you've got some interesting fights. I don't have the whole card in front of me, but Priest, what are your thoughts going into this card? And did you get to check out the Tyson thing? So what did you think of the overall presentation?
I thought the presentation was great for the Tyson thing. And that was Jake Paul and Nate Robinson, right? Or was that a different card?
Correct. So yeah, it was Jake Paul and Nate Robinson, and
so
the Tyson fight was the main event.
So this is the follow-up show from that, because there hasn't been one in between, right?
Right.
Okay. So yeah, Jake Paul and Nate Robinson. Good, you know, he KO'd a basketball player. Now he's getting in there with a real fighter. It does favor Jake Paul in a sense of that it's a boxing match, and Ben Askren is not really known for his striking. But Ben Askren,
look horrible,
world-class athlete, like at as high of a level athlete, collegiate wrestler as you could just about get. So he can train. He has that competitive spirit by nature that I don't think Jake Paul has. It's tough. I want to lean Askren just because of the fight experience and being an athlete, but it is a boxing match, and it's Ben Askren throwing hands, which I question it. I'm excited to see the outcome for sure. And then with the Frank Mir fight, is that an exhibition, or is that actually going to go on there and fight? Because if so, I mean, Frank Mir's chin was gone in the UFC. I can't see him.
Well, I think I want to say it's an exhibition, but I don't know that it can be, though, because if I'm not mistaken, I think Frank Mir is still under contract with Bellator.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to be a good night for him. Go ahead,
That's
Corey.
my biggest fear, though, for the Frank Mir fight, man, is I think it's going to end up being Frank Mir versus the canvas is what it's going to end up being, because like you said, I don't know if you've watched his last couple fights when he made the transition into Bellator, but even those, man, going against the kind of old man's league that Bellator had assembled there a couple of years ago, he was not doing too well. And I feel like, granted, boxing gloves are bigger. You might not get quite as much land through the glove, but that being said, it just he didn't look like he had it anymore. It just looked like it was like one or two, and it was just like lights just switched. It was out of his control type deal.
To be fair, Steve Cunningham's not fighting anymore either. So I mean, let's also take into account that this is all on the same card as Mike Tyson's getting ready to put together his Legends Only League. So I mean, but then again, like we've said, I mean, it doesn't change the fact that you're fighting a world champion boxer, and Frank Mir's boxing was never the best, even in the UFC.
No, and Frank Mir, who was it that it was after the Lesnar fight, he knocked, was it Big Nog that he knocked out?
Yep.
And then Frank Mir, then jiu-jitsu, black belt, arguably the best ground game of the heavyweight division at that time, knocked out Nogueira, and then he thought he was going to be a stand-up boxing fighter, and that hurt his career. He wasn't. Once he started to stand and bang with these guys, he learned real fast that he wasn't as good of a striker as he thought he was. I just don't
understand what it is with grapplers, man, because as a fellow jiu-jitsu guy myself, it's like, to be fair, I started with boxing before I ever did jiu-jitsu, so I came in being ready to throw my hands, but like, I feel like for jiu-jitsu guys or wrestlers or whatever the case, it's like once they start boxing, so many of them just want to bang so bad because they know they have the wrestling in their back pocket. But then it's like, man, I know you've got it in your back pocket, but don't get it twisted, homie. Like, there's levels to the throwing hands game.
I feel like from the outside in, man, watching these the way Triller's been doing this, I feel like they're a fan of both boxing and wrestling, but they're like a boxing purist at heart and just want to see all these MMA guys go in there and get their ass whipped by some boxers in boxing. That's what it kind of seems like with the matchmaking that they're picking, honestly. I mean,
yeah.
So here's the thing, man, because I was looking into this before we came on the show, but it's being rumored now. I heard it on MMA Today earlier. They were talking about it's being rumored about Oscar De La Hoya versus oh boy, I swear I thought I put it on the note.
Heard Eddie Alvarez was in.
That was it. Eddie Alvarez versus De La Hoya. That was it. Dude, and it's like, what are you going to do? You just going to try to pick off all the MMA guys that like their chin's gone? Is that what we're going to do here? Because I said this before, I'll say it again. Like, Oscar De La Hoya is a legend, but I feel like him coming back doesn't have the same steam as what we're seeing from Mike Tyson. So we'll see what happens. What do you guys think happens in this fight with Ben Askren and Jake Paul, though?
Well, quick note, though, at least in this Oscar De La Hoya Eddie Alvarez fight, Eddie Alvarez is still active. He is still fighting. He's still actually doing well in one until he gets disqualified in fights. So,
that was bullshit.
It was, but he was doing good up until that point. I don't feel as though he is chin gone or glass chin or anything at this point. So I think he's still good. So I honestly, if that does end up becoming the matchup that happens, that's going to be another fun one to watch. I'm not going to lie. But as for the match on the weekend, come on, Ben Askren, man. Let's go. Come on. To be honest with you, though, I had seen a bunch of ramblings on Twitter, so I had to go see for myself. But had any of you guys seen the open workout that
I heard that was horrible. I heard it was horrible. I heard they both looked like shit. And then the thing is, I heard that Jake was doing some weird shit where he was standing on a guy's feet and doing like the pregnancy look workout and shit at the open workout. So I don't know what we were watching. If any of you guys were checking out the open workout or anything, we're talking about Ben Askren and Jake Paul. This man was doing like the standing on the man's foot, like some real weirdo stuff, like when Connor had that guy in the park. Priest, what are your thoughts on this fight and how do you see it going?
Well, like I mentioned, Jake Paul, celebrity turned, but he's been boxing for like 3 years. He has an amateur wrestling background, but he wasn't on the level of Ben Askren as an amateur wrestler. Ben Askren was essentially a world-class athlete with that competitive spirit and drive that he has. He's the better athlete. Betting money, usually I lean towards the better athlete in these things, but it is a boxing match, which Ben Askren's is like one of the worst MMA strikers and boxers ever. So that's what makes me hesitant. Jake Paul's not a small guy either. He's a pretty big dude. It's hard to not take the athlete here and go with Askren. But with Triller and all this, it also wouldn't shock me because there's no money for a follow-up match. This might be the pro wrestling mind in me. There's no money for Triller if Ben Askren wins. The money's on Jake Paul and who he fights next. So not to say that it's going to be a fixed fight or a thrown fight or anything like that, but Triller wants Jake Paul to win. They want him to continue to be that annoying, obnoxious heel. So then somebody else from the MMA world or somebody else with a boxing background can step up to fight him, and they can have another big payday. That's kind of my take on it. I know I've never really given a straight answer, but when I put my bet in on the fight, it'll be on Ben Askren. I might regret it.
Well, just to that point, though, how you had talked about him kind of maybe calling out another MMA guy or something like that. I don't know if you guys had seen before this match had became the official match. He was actually really looking at getting in there with Michael Bisping, and that was the
Bisping would have killed him.
Yeah, that's what I wish that would be the matchup on the night, because it would have been a totally different ball game.
But Bisping he would never get cleared with his doesn't he have like bad like basically one eye is all he can see out of?
Yeah, he faked his way through it with UFC for how many years? So
yeah, but
dude, they could find some doctor to clear him, dude. I
would bet you.
I see what you did there, sir. Well played. But I mean, I'm just hoping for the sake of MMA that Ben Askren wins, because if Jake Paul wins, dude, it's going to be, I knocked out an MMA guy. But to your point, Priest, I feel like at a certain point, this is only going to be able to go on for so long. Because yes, that kid's getting okay at boxing, but he's going to end up getting cracked, and we're going to see if he's really got a chin, because he ain't been hit yet.
Well,
he ain't been hit yet. And before we get off the subject of Paul versus Askren, I do got to take it back to WrestleMania one more time, because Tyler specifically asked to hear our opinions on this. So what were your thoughts on them bringing in Logan Paul into WrestleMania? I don't know if that was just a ploy to try to help them plug his brother's fight or what, but dude, like, it was a little random. So for me, man,
I didn't find it random, because Logan Paul's like, is he still the number one dude on YouTube? If not, he's top 5. Excuse me.
And then I comment on it, and he walks. Look at you, Tyler. As soon as I say something about it, here he comes in the comments.
I just feel like it was WWE looking to capitalize with trying to get younger viewers to come watch them. And you have to think, Peacock has 30 million subscribers. WWE Network had 1. You go on that Peacock app. I know people who I work with that watch the Hall of Fame because they saw a picture of Hulk Hogan. They don't watch pro wrestling. They catch a glimpse of Logan Paul. You have someone young and they see a picture of Logan Paul on the WrestleMania poster or on the match graphic. They might go, what's he doing there? And they click it. It wasn't to appeal to a wrestling fan. It was to appeal to try to garner new viewership. And it was good for Sami Zayn got a rub off of it. Owens got the stunner him. He gets his name in the headlines, and Logan Paul did business. He's hated. He knows he's a heel. He understands that. He went out there. He did his job, and that's what everybody on WrestleMania essentially went out there and they did their job, and they did their job well. And he did his job really well. I would have liked to hear him on commentary, but they were probably scared of the language that might come out of his mouth.
Well, actually, I don't know if you've watched him. Like you said, being on YouTube as much as I am, he has almost cult-like following. But I'm not a regular viewer or anything of his podcast, but he's had a couple interesting guests and stuff on. And he's actually a little more well-versed than I thought. Logan Paul, not Jake. Jake's still on the younger side and acts young. But Logan Paul's actually surprised. He really did surprise me. I've seen a lot of people do a lot worse with the following he has. So
yeah, for sure.
But as for his performance, I guess you could say, on WrestleMania, or lack thereof, really, in my opinion, I don't see him sitting in the back on like a throne thing and then stepping in the ring as like him coming out during WrestleMania. If you're gonna have a match, have a match. If you're not, cool, just sit in the stands in the front row. Like, I don't, like you said, the stunner and stuff was kind of cool, I guess. Get a little bit of a rub for a guy, one of their guys, but it's just, I could have done more, should have done more, or should have done less, in my opinion.
My only beef with it is more so, Tyler, and since you're wanting to talk about it, you said you think they could have chose somebody better. I mean, to that, I would say it's more so got to do with the fact that they're both boxing right now, and they're both what's hot in the news right now because of them being in the news. So I think that's why they got picked. But I said this, going into it. I know you saw the tweet, Priest, but here's my thing. I got no problem with them using Logan Paul. My issues, I think they could have picked a better match for that to be impacted in. Now, granted, it did go along kind of with what Sami Zayn's been doing for a little while now, but at the same time, like that match alone, if you just give it time, has WrestleMania match written all over it. Like I was telling Corey, there's story to it. There's a reason people want to see it. Like I say, and Tyler's asking in the comments, is he still on with Floyd? Now, I heard they were talking about that, but I've not really heard any rumblings of it since. I think it'd be interesting, but boy, would that be a murder for Logan Paul. Logan Paul would get killed.
Yeah, and the thing with Logan Paul is like it's all business for him, right? And doing the WWE thing, my understanding, he's been a fan his whole life. He understands the wrestling business from a fan's perspective, and he got to go out there and do his thing. And I thought it made sense with Sami Zayn, the whole conspiracy theory angle, because I believe Logan Paul, part of his success is he's a conspiracy theory guy. So, I mean, what other match would you stick him in? Who else would you stick him with? Like,
yeah,
that'd be my question.
I hear that, and with the conspiracy part, that makes sense. But
I mean, it's kind of hard to, when you look at that card as a whole, like where else do you put him? He didn't really do much. He didn't take away from the angle. If anything, he enhanced it by giving it that mainstream rub and putting more eyes on SmackDown, putting more eyes on WrestleMania potentially. And then, like I said, with him getting the stunner, that's for the websites that are non-wrestling related. That's for ESPN. That's for TMZ. That's for all that. And that's putting Kevin Owens front and center there, which is a good thing for pro wrestling and a good thing for Kevin Owens.
And I'll take that back to the same as what we were talking about with the Bad Bunny thing. I'm not mad that they used him because I am a firm believer, at least when done right, it brings a lot of eyes to wrestling. And as we already said earlier in the show, the Bad Bunny thing did that. And like you said, it didn't really take away from anything. I was a big fan of the story of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. It makes sense from the conspiracy angle, but I haven't been the biggest fan of that as well with Sammy, just because I think he could be doing more, but that's another story for another time. We also got
stuff he's done his whole career.
Yeah,
that's my take, though.
Hey,
he's finally got a character that has got layers.
Yeah, Priest is, Priest. This is why I'm glad I brought you on, because you're making damn good points. Because I can't even argue that if nothing else, from a pure character standpoint, the son of a bitch has always got some random off the wall something with it. So I'll give him that. Tyler coming into the comments, I thought Bad Bunny was dope. Yeah, I think that's the general consensus on that one, man. I think everybody pretty much was surprised by the Bad Bunny performance on that one. Maybe I'm being a little too critical on it. Like I said, I love the story in that. I would have liked to seen, my only thing is I wish WWE has a bad habit of not playing into the stories that have already happened, previously. You know what I mean? Like they like to play dumb to it a lot. I guess that's more what I meant in that I would have liked to seen them hearken more into the fact that, these dudes have been fighting back and forth both in WWE and elsewhere.
Yeah, they alluded to it. And they did some classic spots of those guys. They alluded to it, but I mean, I don't want to digress too much into it. We've already talked WrestleMania, but yeah, I could talk about it all day because I think it's like you have to go again. While I talked about when I was talking about that, the video package and the storyline of that match, the match they had at WrestleMania matched that storyline. They didn't go out there and just do high spot fest that they would have done in Ring of Honor 10 years ago, which they easily could have done, but the match they had matched the story that was told to get to the match.
Makes sense. All right, like he said, we've got UFC to talk about. let's go over what we've got here on this main card. Of course, card is always subject to change, so the order and if these fights make it to fight night, that could all change. But as it says on here, the first fight we got Luis Pena at a -148 versus Alexander Munoz at a +120. Now, I personally am a big fan of Violent Bob Ross, and he just had a camp change as well, so that's going to be interesting as we go into this fight. But if I'm picking this fight, dude, I got to go with my man, Violent Bob Ross. What do you guys think about this fight?
I couldn't agree more. I'm a huge fan of, like you said, Violent Bob Ross, Mr. Luis Pena. Listening to him in interviews and stuff, man, his voice does not match like the character and persona that he puts on, like inside the cage. So if you guys have never listened to him, just go listen to like him go, deal with the reporters and stuff for media day. It's funny. But yeah, I definitely feel like he's turned a corner. I feel like he's looked really good in his last couple performances. I really actually like the matchup with another person we'll be getting to later on in the card. The matchup that they originally had, which was him and Dakar Close a couple weeks back, that one got pushed forward. Now they're both on the same card but fighting different opponents, so explain that. But I felt like that would have been a really fun matchup. Not that I'm mad at the Jeremy Stevens Dakar Close match at all, but
hey, we're a big fan of Little Heathen over here, Corey. Don't you come slandering the name of Jeremy Stevens on this here podcast.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm not at all bashing on that. I just feel like if we're talking about exclusively for Luis Pena, I feel like that was a real match where he could have earned his way into a not necessarily a contender match, but a top 15 for sure, coming off a win of somebody like Dakar Close. But either way, I feel like he should be able to pull it off. Alex Munoz is no ho whatsoever. He's actually very skilled. He's only got one defeat, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe he's coming off of his first defeat. So should be a very interesting matchup, but I lean towards Violent Bob Ross in this one for sure.
All right. What about you, Priest? Who are you taking in this one?
Pena. I mean, I'm with you guys on that. I'm not as familiar with Munoz as I am with Pena, so that's simply what it is. And then Pena being the favorite seems to make sense to me.
So the next fight we've got on the docket, you got Abdul Razak Al Hassan versus Jacob Malkoun. Malkoun has looked impressive, man, but man, Al Hassan though, dude, I don't know. For me, I think Hassan is going to roll through this one. What about you, Corey?
So this one is a very interesting. I feel like for both of these guys, it's kind of like a shit or get off the pot situation, right? Because both of them, like you said, have had very like good performances that ended up in losses, or like in Abdul Ravanok Hassan's. However, I believe I got that right, but close to it. In his circumstance, I believe he actually does have one win in the UFC, but I think he's 1-2, if I'm not mistaken. Now, as for Jacob Malkoun, he's longtime training partner of Robert Whitaker. That's why you always kind of see them two tag along on fight cards. But that being said, he's a longtime training partner with not a ton of fight experience. If you look at his record, it's 4-1, and his last fight was the one. So I'm really concerned how he's going to be able to rebound back from that. I know he took a lot of time, but if I'm not mistaken, that was a knockout loss, and he's going in there against somebody who has very, very heavy hands in Hassan. So it's going to be an interesting fight. I definitely feel like it actually would have been kind of a glimpse into the future if the Paulo Costa Robert Whitaker fight hadn't have fallen off because of the size comparison between the both competitors in the match. But I'm interested for it. I lean towards Al Hassan as well.
What about you, Priest?
I'm going the opposite here. I think Al Hassan. Well, actually, I should ask first. What weight class is this at? Because Alisana knows had a problem making weight.
This one's gonna be middleweight.
Yep, this is middleweight.
Okay, so he can't make welterweight. I think that's where he's had his issues is at 170. Yeah, yeah, I'd bet against Alisana. I'll go with Muldoon. I just feel like I mean Hassan, it's like knockout or loss. If he doesn't finish a guy in the first round, he's done. That could have been the weight cut to 170 that caused those problems, but I don't usually trust fighters that are just first round knockout artists once they get stiffer competition. So I'll be going Muldoon on this one.
All right, Corey.
What about you, Corey? Kyle, what about you? What do you got?
I'm going with Hassan on this one, dude.
Okay.
I think Hassan's going to demolish this dude. I don't know what it is. Something, maybe not demolish him, but I just feel like at 185, I feel like he's going to come in more energized. I feel like he's going to come out hot. Now, like you said, though, I also think it could be one of those things where Hassan comes in super hot. And then, if he doesn't get the finish in the beginning, that it could be a big problem for him if he doesn't finish him right away. Because I could see him coming in wanting to make a statement like that. And then, if he doesn't get the finish right away, it's a problem.
Yeah. I think he's the favorite too. Alsan is, right?
He is. He's a minus 335 favorite, and Malkoon is a plus 245 underdog.
You know what? I'm gonna sprinkle on Malkoon. I'm gonna double down on it.
I was gonna say, in a fight like this, when you have two comparable opponents with such a big spread like that, with non-proven fighters, I feel like that's definitely worth putting a couple bucks on, man, with that kind of spread. One fight I do want to get your guys' thoughts on real quick. It's the leader of the prelims, because she's one of my favorites, man. Tracy Cortez. I feel like she's a underlining star soon to be in the UFC, taking on Justine Kish. I'm really hoping we've seen the Tracy Cortez show coming up on Saturday night.
So Cortez has really been doing her thing, dude. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know. What about you, Priest? I think Cortez has got a lot to show. Let me see if it's the same Tracy Cortez that I'm thinking. I got to look at
it. It is.
All right, then never mind. I definitely want to see Tracy Cortez win. Hot damn. That's what I was trying to before I made my statement. I wanted to try to make sure that I was correct. But yes, absolutely. I am always a fan of watching Tracy Cortez fight, and the fact that she can actually get in there and bang makes it all the better.
Yeah.
I know Crunch Time was talking about Valerie Loretta, but damn.
Yeah, with the two of them, I can only picture Kish when she fought. I think it was Felice Herrig, and I don't know if I've ever seen Cortez fight, so I can't really speak on this one.
Well, pay attention Saturday for the headline of the prelim. It'll be a good one.
All right.
All right. The next fight we got on the main card. Now we're getting into some more names. You got the Pitbull, Andre Arlovsky, at a minus 130 favorite versus Chase Sherman, who's a plus 105 underdog.
I love me Andre Arlovsky. I was a big fan of Andre Arlovsky, but I mean, you got to go with I would go with the younger fighter here in Sherman. I mean, Arlovsky's. I feel like the last 8 years of Arlovsky's career has been spent. He's like a coffin on roller skates. Every fight's. It could end at any second, either way, and it's exciting as hell. But I love Andre Arlovsky. I just could never put money on him. I'd put money against him just because he doesn't have the chin he had, 15 years ago when he's in there with Tim Sylvia just banging it out.
Well,
he loved getting in them firefights, dude. And at this point, he ain't got the chin, like you said. But I always love watching me some Pitbull fights. I'm just saying. Either way, I feel like it's going to be fun to watch. Who are you taking? You said you're taking.
Oh, Sherman. Yeah, I go with Sherman. Yeah.
Just the simple fact that you had to say he can't take a shot like he used to 15 plus years ago is probably the reason why he can't take a shot like he used to 15 plus years ago. But yet again, joining the club on this one, Andre Arlovski, I think, is just a general fan favorite, especially as it's gone further and further throughout his career. And he's kind of like lost that whole bad boy persona and stuff and just came in there as like a legit skilled heavyweight that, like you said, is at the end of his career for the last, 10 years now?
Yeah.
It's like,
think about how long ago it was when he was heavyweight champion.
That's what I'm saying. He's been on the end of his career, but it just keeps like the boat keeps floating. And I, for some reason, feel like Chase Sherman, even though he looked really impressive in his last fight, this is a short notice fight for Chase Sherman, if I'm not mistaken. I just don't know. I remember Chase Sherman a lot from his first UFC stint, and I feel like even though he looked impressive in his return in his first fight back to the UFC in his last one, I just don't. I watched him in bare knuckle. I watched him in quite a few different fights and stuff, and I don't know if he's got enough to beat Andre Arlovski. He's still tricky as hell, man. Like, I really thought Tanner Boser was going to be somebody in the heavyweight division to watch out for, and he went in there and handled him. And yet again, I agree with your point completely that I wouldn't put money on him because of the fact of the chin and the fact that he's just so aged and weathered and stuff. But that weathered dog still got some new tricks, and I feel like Andre Arlovski, the weathered pit bull, is pulling it off this Saturday.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I'm not betting money on it, but something tells me that Arlovski's going to do his damn thing this weekend, but I'm most definitely not putting no money on it.
I hope so. I mean, you said he beat Tanner Bosner, right? That was last year, I believe they fought. Because the last fight I was thinking he had was that fight with Rothwell 2 years ago, maybe. Can you believe that when he left the UFC the first time and that Fader fight was in 2009, I think it was. Because I know where I was at because I was wrestling at the time, and I know the company I was wrestling with, where I watched that Fader Arlovski fight at, and that was definitely like 2009. That was 11 years ago, and he was
that on the Affliction card?
No, I think that was a Strikeforce card. The Affliction,
yeah, that was it.
The Affliction card, I thought, was that when he fought Roy Nelson? It was like the fight before that, or was that Elite XC?
It was Roy. So at Affliction, it was Fedor versus I want to say Fedor versus Barnett, because I know like Megadeth played in between.
Yes,
and shit
yeah,
like that.
Yeah, it was Fedor and Barnett. But I mean that was 2009. He's in there with Fedor. He lost to Fedor in 2009. I think he went on a losing streak. Never thought you'd see Arlovski back. Then he got back in the UFC on like he replaced a fighter, if I'm not mistaken, in like 2012, and he's just been around ever since. It's like
that's why I say you can't count him out. I'm not putting money on Arlovski, man, but something tells me Arlovski's about to show this young buck what's up, especially on short notice.
I have his record in front of me, and we'll start from 2019. He got KO'd by Jairzinho Rosenstruck. Can't really take too much away from him on that one. That's kind of what would almost be expected. It sucks. It was a 29-second in the first round. But then he came back, like you said, got the decision win over Ben Rothwell, lost to Augusto Sakai, who had just fought in the main event last year, was looking good against Alistair Overeem until the fight kind of ended. He got the decision over Tanner Boser last year. He got another one over Felipe Lenz shortly after that. And then starting his 2021, his loss was to Tom Aspinall, who's a real good contender on the rise at heavyweight. So he's still sneaky good, man. That's like in his last.
He's good. Period. That's the thing, man. He's got that knowledge and he's got the experience, man. I mean, that fight's going to be interesting.
Is he 41 or 42 now?
Let me see.
He's old.
Right here.
I remember he was I just don't remember what his birthday was, but I think he's like a 78 or 79. I think he's a 79 birthday. 42, so he's like an early year birthday.
February 79, yep.
Yeah.
All right, so co-main event, we talked about it a little bit. You got Jeremy Stevens versus Drakkar Klose. Now, Corey, you can say whatever you want. I understand Drakkar Klose is a Michigan boy over here, but we here on this show rock with Little Heathen Stevens, and I watched that man throw an uppercut from his fucking toes and knock Rafael Dos Anjos into cloud number 9 in Vegas. So I always am very partial to Jeremy Stevens. For me on this one, I think Little Heathen gets the job done.
Well,
I also think he's too experienced for Drakkar Klose.
I could agree with you. It just depends on what version of him we see, honestly, because if you want to just get a scary version of him in the cage, look at him when he fought Josh Emmett, man. He about murdered Josh Emmett. He broke his whole orbital bone, had to put him out for like 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, from a
but wasn't that 3 years ago?
Yeah, it was something like that, and he's only fought once since. I mean, granted, he busted his knees up in that fight, but he's only fought once since.
He's only fought one time since the Emmett fight? Didn't he fight Yair Rodriguez?
I'm saying Emmett
Josh.
fought once since.
Oh, Josh Emmett, okay.
So what I'm saying is Jeremy Stevens goes in there and really he still has that ability to really hurt people, and if from the way it's been looking, watching the media days and stuff leading into this fight night, Drakkar Klose kind of just thinks it's not a foregone conclusion that he's going to get the win, but he just feels like he's far more superior. And I don't. It's going to be a fight, man. This. If you were to put all of the fights on paper in front of me, this is fight of the night 20 times out of 20. This is literally it's gotta be, man. Both of these guys go.
So are you taking Stevens or Klose though?
Michigan boy all the way. Drakkar Klose.
All right, Priest, what about you?
I mean, Jeremy Stevens, I don't think he's ever had a bad fight. And Jeremy Stevens has been fighting the UFC for a very, very long time. And he may have fought since then, but I know he has been on a losing streak. Last fight I know he had was against Yair Rodriguez. He did not look very good in that fight. Still an exciting fight, but I didn't think he looked very good. He's got to win. Like I think if he loses, like you can't. He's lost? He was on a 3 or 4 fight losing streak before.
He's 4 in a row right now.
So he has to win, and the experience and that desperation to win. Like it's win or go home. So I gotta take Stevens.
I'm one point that needs to be made too with this is Jeremy Stevens' move up again for like the 4th, 5th time in his career, but he's going back to lightweight in this one, and that's where I kind of feel like Drakkar Klose is going to have a bigger advantage. I feel like he's going to be the bigger boy significantly because I feel like Jeremy Stevens kind of even looks undersized against some of the 45ers nowadays with how people cut weight. So we'll see how that one plays out on the weekend.
I feel like Stevens, though, did have his best success at 55. So,
yeah,
I agree. I mean, he had some notable highlights and got up pretty high at 145. But I mean, all right, let's get to the main event. The main event is going to be Robert Whittaker versus Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin Gastelum's coming off a beautiful performance on that Kamaru Usman card. But something tells me that Robert Whittaker is on a roll and is on his way back towards the title. I think it's going to be a great fight, but if I'm picking and I'm putting money on this fight, I think Robert Whittaker is going to get him a dub in this one.
I want to pose you guys a question since you're so quick to judge it right now. Play this fight out this weekend, and if it had originally played out when it was a title match, do you feel like there was any different implication of how the fight would have played out, or is it kind of similar? Just looking at the fact that Gastelum had a couple losses in between, and I mean, granted he looked amazing in that Izzy fight and stuff, but Hermanson choked him out real quick and stuff like that, and kind of exposed, flaws in his ground game for sure. It's interesting, how time has changed the matchup,
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like it's Whitaker's fight to lose. Gastelum, though, is a hard guy to count out. I thought the fight, I think it was with Darren Till. I thought Gastelum had that fight. And I think they went to Till, so that's one of the losses, I believe, in between the when that fight was supposed to happen. I think it was after Adesanya. And has he fought? He won against Usman, but did he have a fight in between Till and Usman? Does anybody know? Hermanson, you said
he fought Till, Hermanson. Both of those were back-to-back losses, and then he rebounded against Ian Heinisch.
Oh, Heinisch, that's who. Yeah, where was I getting Usman from? But
he looked good in that fight. I'll give him credit. He owned Heinisch that whole fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it's Whitaker's fight to lose. I feel like Whitaker wins this fight 4 out of 5 times.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Corey, where are you at on this one?
I feel like the margin's even slimmer. Personally, I feel like Gastelum's ways of winning kind of go into Rob's superior tendencies, I guess you could call it. I feel like Rob's a better striker. I feel like Rob is really good at taking people down himself. I've never seen him really getting taken down and controlled or anything on the ground, which Gastelum looks like has been his way to victory in the last couple fights. I don't, other than a hard, solid left hand, which he has put many of people out, I don't see how Gastelum's winning this fight. That being said, he's put many people out. He put Bisping out on short notice. I mean, he went on a huge rise to get into the top echelons of the division. So it is a deserving matchup. I'm glad to see it get rematched and stuff. But I lean towards the Reaper Nation in Whitaker myself.
Where is this card at? Is this Vegas?
This is the last one that they're running in the Apex for a while, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Does Whitaker is he still training like in Australia, or is he training here now in States?
No, he's still coming out of Australia.
And he's fought, I think, overseas. He was fighting on those Abu Dhabi cards, right? He wasn't fighting in the States.
He fought in Abu Dhabi. Yep.
That travel could be interesting to take into it too.
That is a very interesting factor. But watching him on the media weeks and stuff, he flew in, if I'm not mistaken, like 12 days out or something like that.
Okay, so he's acclimated.
Yeah. So, and he seems to just kind of be embracing it. He's a gamer like myself, so he just kind of brings his setup wherever he goes and plugs in, and he can escape for a couple hours. So he seems pretty content with the travel. Honestly, it doesn't seem like it's bothering him all that much.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah. I was just trying to think of that dynamics, because I think it was when he fought Yael Romero in Chicago. He won that fight, but I remember him making a comment after the fight saying that the travel played a big impact on him. But I know he came back after the injury, and he fought Jared Cannonier last year. Is that his only fight? Oh no, he fought Till as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he looked incredible in both of those. In my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, that pretty much caps up the UFC card, man. But we got Bellator this weekend. You got Askren and Paul this weekend. You got fights galore. And then, like we said, we got the UFC card next weekend, which will have James Lynch on with us on Thursday to give you our breakdown of the main card and all that good stuff as well, man. So it's a lot of action. Priest, what do you got in store over on Ramblings of a Grappleman before we get out of here?
Last week I dropped 3 episodes. I dropped a brand new Ramblings of a Grappleman, where it was like a little bit of a mixed bag with some Q&A from the Instagram. More of my deep thoughts on the back bump, which I go into about a 15-minute diatribe on just a simple back bump and selling the mat, as well as father-son combinations in wrestling, commentary tips. I give a deep dive into commentary tips, and I forgot the other piece to that. There was 4 key topics I talked about. That was last week. There's also a gambling episode, and I've been doing a podcast with my old friend Nick Braxton called Elite Edition under the Ramblings of a Grappleman umbrella. So Elite Edition, we recap AEW Dynamite every week, give a breakdown of that program, give a little bit of a deep dive and analysis and for AEW Dynamite. That's a weekly show. Gambling with Grappleman, next episode should drop next week. We'll be talking NFL Draft and Kentucky Derby, and probably UFC. The Jacksonville card, I believe, is on the docket there. So I've got a couple co-hosts there. Maybe you guys could bring you guys in when we get to the UFC side of things, and we'll have a whole shebang about it. But yeah, the Ramblings of a Grappleman, my passion project on those when it's just me rambling on my own. Those have become fewer than I would have liked them to have been originally, but I'm having a lot of fun with Elite Edition and the gambling side of things.
Well, make sure you check him out at all the places as mentioned. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you smash that subscribe button so you don't miss next week. We've got a big week of heavy hitters in the broadcasting game as we're going to be bringing you Dave LaGreca from Busted Open Radio on Tuesday to talk a little bit of Mission Pro Wrestling. On Thursday, we're going to be joined by James Lynch. Now, James Lynch will be at a different time. We're going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern as he's up there in Canada. So, yeah, man, we're going to do that one a little bit earlier than normal. But, yeah, man, there's plenty to talk about. And as always, man, if you ever need somebody to come shoot shit about the All Elite Edition and any of that stuff, let me know. And we appreciate you guys sticking around and listening to us run our gums for the last hour or so. Until Tuesday, peace.